That night, I wore my oldest dress on purpose, because I wanted to see how people treat you when they think you have nothing. My name is Linda, I'm 54 years old, and I've lived my entire life believing that simplicity is the most powerful form of wealth. For the past 20 years, I've worked as a senior accountant in a private company, earning around $40,000 every month, but I never felt the need to show it. My son, Michael, always saw me wearing the same kind of modest clothes, living in a small but clean house, and driving my old Toyota. He thought we lived on a tight budget, and maybe that's how I wanted him to think. I wanted him to grow humble, kind, and independent. A few months ago, Michael got married to a sweet girl named Hannah. At least, she seemed sweet when I first met her. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, were wealthy, well-known people in the city. I could tell from their tone, their style, even their silence. They carried pride like it was perfume. Last week, Michael called me with excitement in his voice. "Mom, Hannah's parents invited us all for dinner this Sunday. You have to come. It'll mean a lot to me." I smiled through the phone. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be there." But something inside me whispered, "Let's see how they treat you when they think you're not worth much." So I decided to play a small test. I took off my gold jewelry, wore an old floral dress, tied my hair into a simple bun, and put on those worn-out shoes I used to wear for gardening. When I looked in the mirror, I almost didn't recognize myself. Not the successful accountant. Not the woman who owns 3 apartments and a luxury car hidden in another garage. Just a simple, old, tired mother. That Sunday evening, I took the bus instead of driving. I wanted them to see me arrive like someone without much money. As I walked up to the big house, its glass doors shining under the porch lights, I took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened, and the first thing I saw was Mrs. Collins, smile slowly fading as her eyes scanned my clothes. Mrs. Collins' smile froze halfway, like she wasn't sure whether to greet me or shut the door. "Oh, Mrs. Linda, right?" she said, her voice sharp. Behind that polite tone rich people use when they don't really want to be polite. "Yes," I replied with a soft smile. "I hope I'm not too late." Her eyes flickered down to my old shoes, the ones with a tiny tear on the side, then up again to my face. "Not at all," she said quickly. "Come in." But she didn't move aside immediately. For a few seconds, I stood there awkwardly before she finally stepped back, letting me in. Inside, the house gleamed like a museum, marble floors, golden curtains, chandeliers bright enough to blind you. Every inch of it screamed money. Michael came rushing over, hugged me tightly, and whispered, "Mom, I'm so glad you came." His warmth melted my nerves for a moment, but when I looked past him, I caught Hannah's parents exchanging a look, the kind people share when they're silently judging. At the dinner table, I quietly took a seat near the end, trying not to disturb anyone. Mrs. Collins quickly rearranged the table setting, moving a wine glass and fork away from my spot, muttering something about balancing the table. "Linda," Mr. Collins said in a heavy voice, "Hannah tells us you live in—" What was it? "A small apartment downtown." "Yes," I nodded. "It's small, but cozy. Perfect for one person." He smiled thinly. "Must be hard on your budget these days. Everything's getting expensive." "Oh, I manage," I replied gently, sipping my water. I could feel Hannah shifting uncomfortably beside Michael. She wasn't saying much. I wondered if she was embarrassed or just nervous. Then came the moment that truly tested them. A waiter, probably their family helper, came to pour drinks. When he reached my glass, Mrs. Collins said quietly, "Oh, she doesn't need the champagne. Just give her water." The table went silent for a second. Michael looked at me, clearly unsure what to say. I just smiled. "Water's fine, dear. Thank you." Throughout dinner, they talked about real estate, travel, and luxury vacations. They never asked about me, my work, or my life. To them, I was invisible, a background extra in their glamorous world. At one point, Mrs. Collins leaned toward her husband and said softly, "I just hope Michael doesn't end up struggling financially because of, family responsibilities." I heard it. Every word. She meant me. Michael tried to lighten the mood, saying, "Mom's very independent. She never asks for anything." But his mother-in-law only smiled and replied, "That's good. Some people never learn how to live within their limits." I smiled politely again, pretending not to understand the insult. Inside, though, I thought to myself, they have no idea who they're talking to. Dinner ended awkwardly. When I stood to leave, Mrs. Collins offered me a half-hearted hug and said, "It was nice meeting you." Her husband just nodded. As I walked out into the cool night air, I felt strangely calm. This wasn't anger, it was disappointment. Not in them, but in how easily people confuse wealth with worth. Before getting on the bus, I looked back at that shining house and whispered, "Let's see how long you can wear your mask when mine comes off." The bus ride home felt longer than usual that night. The lights of the city passed by my window like blurred memories, cold, distant, and full of lessons. I replayed every word, every look, every fake smile from that dinner table. By the time I reached my house, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to expose them out of pride, but to teach them something my son needed to see too. The difference between money and manners. The following week, I received a call from Michael. "Mom, are you okay? You seemed quiet at dinner." I smiled through the phone. "I'm fine, honey. I was just observing." "Observing?" he asked, confused. "Yes," I replied softly. "Sometimes, people show who they really are when they think you're less than them." He didn't understand what I meant, not yet. But he would. 2 days later, I had a business meeting at the new construction project. My company was funding a luxury apartment complex downtown. As I walked into the site, the project manager greeted me warmly. "Good morning, Ms. Linda. The Collins construction team is already here for their proposal review." I froze for a second. Collins. When I entered the conference room, there they were, Mr. and Mrs. Collins. Dressed perfectly as always, sitting across the table. Their confident smiles disappeared the moment they saw me. Mrs. Collins blinked twice, her face pale. You're part of the board." I smiled politely. "Actually, I'm the head financial advisor for the company. I oversee all major contracts and partnerships." You could almost hear the silence stretch across the room. The same woman who had denied me a glass of champagne now sat speechless, gripping her purse like it was her last defense. I continued calmly, "It's good to see you both again. Your proposal looked interesting, but I noticed some inconsistencies in the cost breakdown. We'll have to review them carefully." My tone was professional, not cruel, but it carried weight, the kind that reminded them who really held the power. Mr. Collins stammered, "Oh, of course, Ms. Linda, we'll make all necessary corrections immediately." I nodded, "Good. Transparency is everything in business and in life." After the meeting ended, I could see embarrassment written all over their faces. Mrs. Collins hesitated, then finally said, "Mrs. Linda, about that dinner. I hope you didn't take anything the wrong way." I looked straight into her eyes and replied, "Oh, I didn't take anything the wrong way, Mrs. Collins. I just took it as it was." Then I turned and walked out, leaving them to sit in their own silence. That evening, Michael called again. "Mom, Hannah's parents told us you're working with them on a project. Why didn't you tell me?" I smiled, "Because it wasn't necessary, dear. My job doesn't define who I am, and it shouldn't define how people treat others either." He was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Mom, I think I understand now." A few days passed after that meeting. I thought that was the end of it, that they'd simply stay embarrassed and avoid me from then on. But one evening, as I was preparing tea in my kitchen, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, I saw Michael, Hannah, and behind them, Mr. and Mrs. Collins. For a second, none of us spoke. Then Hannah stepped forward and said quietly, "Mom, can we come in?" I nodded and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." They walked inside, looking around at the simple living room, the same one they had probably imagined as proof of my poverty. But tonight, I didn't hide anything. The certificates on the wall, the photos from corporate events, and the awards I'd received over the years, all of it was there, openly displayed. Mrs. Collins looked stunned. Mr. Collins's face turned red with shame. Michael broke the silence. "Mom, they came to apologize." Mrs. Collins took a deep breath. "Mrs. Linda, I owe you an apology. The way we treated you that night was unforgivable. I judged you by what you wore, not who you were." Her voice cracked slightly. "I was proud, and I'm ashamed of that now." Mr. Collins nodded slowly. "We were wrong. You taught us something we should have known long ago." I set the teapot down and looked at them gently. "People make mistakes," I said. "But the real test isn't whether you make them, it's whether you learn from them." Then I turned to Hannah. She looked like she'd been holding tears for days. "Mom," she said softly, "I felt so embarrassed that night. I should have spoken up. I'm sorry." I reached out and touched her hand. "Hannah, it's okay. You'll learn that silence can hurt as much as words. But admitting it takes courage." Michael's eyes were shining. "You planned all this, didn't you?" I smiled. "Not to hurt anyone. I just wanted to see how people treat those who can't offer them anything in return." He stepped forward and hugged me tightly. "You're incredible, Mom. I'm proud of you." For the first time, I saw Mrs. Collins smile, a real one, not the polite kind. "I hope," she said quietly, "you can forgive us." I nodded. Forgiveness is easy when people truly change. We all sat together for tea. No expensive china, no fancy table, just warm cups, honest eyes, and a lesson that money could never buy. Later that night, after they'd left, I stood by the window and watched the city lights. Life had taught me that true wealth isn't in your salary or your house. It's in your character. And as I looked up at the quiet stars, I whispered to myself, some people measure richness by what they have, but the richest hearts are those who remember where they came from.